So if you're like me, you may be cruising online marketplaces looking for old vehicles, specifically in this case, an old transit bus. So it's not uncommon to see these pop up from time to time, but they always seem to have a varied condition. So I'm going to take a look at some that I have found online. Specifically here, I'm going to look at one that I found on eBay. This is no way an endorsement of the marketplace of eBay and their services, nor do I have any relationship to the sale or purchase of this vehicle. This is just kind of something that I watched from afar, and I thought it was kind of worth looking into a little bit deeper and put myself in the position of the buyer. What would I be willing to pay for this bus? So let's take a look here at this one. It's a 1967 GMC Transit bus. They list it as an old look, obviously. Detroit diesel Allison transmission. It says it's rust free, so that's nice. It is down in Georgia, so it's not dealing with the winters, or at least it currently isn't. It may have been somewhere else. The overall synopsis of this vehicle in their description is that it's a 1960, actually it's an old look bus. Predates the arrival of the new look buses that arrived in '68. It does say that this was used by a company that provided, or at least previous to their purchase, provided vehicles for movies. So this bus may have been in a movie or a TV show. They don't comment on that else. So they say that it's a model TDH3501, so it's a 30-foot bus. Serial number is 1029, so that's useful, so you can look up that and kind of see where the bus had its start. So seats 35 people, 18 people standing. Is a 6-cylinder Detroit diesel, Allison transmission, air brakes, which are par for the course for these types of vehicles, and an odometer reading of 98,575, and it says exempt. There must be some sort of licensing or registration requirement. And I also would guess that 98,000 may be a lot more than that the odometer flips and only shows 100,000 miles. So this could be hundreds of thousands of miles more. I'm guessing more than 500,000 would be a safe guess. So they said the body panels are straight. The bus was painted about 5 years ago. The paint is glossy. I call it driver quality. So that may be it's not showroom quality or some sort of like automotive show quality that you're going to have some sort of competition with, but it's passable for driving around. The glass is all good except for the left rear window. Has a crack in it, it looks like. But it's flat glass, so it shouldn't be too hard to have replaced. The seats were removed, and they're not sure if they belong to the bus. And they're in there, I guess. Wooden floors, and the rubber flooring on top of that is in good condition. The engine starts every time. It idles great, runs cool. Allison transmission shifts good. I'd like to see that. And it burns a little bit of oil, I guess, or it smokes a bit, which is kind of par for the course for Detroit diesels. Air brake warning system, buzzer comes on until 80 PSI, and then it is good to drive, which again is kind of standard for these vehicles. The air brake system functions properly. The two air door systems open and close, but you have to wiggle the switch. He's only driven the bus 10 miles from where it was stored. The tires are dry. They hold air, but do not recommend driving on them on the road. So initially, it's only ever been driven 10 miles. I'm not sure what quality of review they can give on the condition of this vehicle. I would like to put some more miles on it and see how it would do over a good half an hour or 45 minutes of operating. All lights, turn signals, gauges work except for the fuel gauge. So fuel gauge, nice bonus. Hopefully that could be fixed. And so we know the serial number for this vehicle. So the next stop would be to look at the Ohio Museum of Transportation and their records there and see what it pops up. So looking at that, it says that this vehicle was purchased by the U.S. Navy, specifically the Great Lakes Naval Training Center. So that's fascinating. So that vehicle has a very unique service history. I can't imagine that the military has bought a lot of transit buses during those years, and now that one's on the market. So a little bit of research by the seller that could have figured that out. I think that's a huge angle for trying to sell this vehicle, that this is actually a Navy bus. All right, so let's look at some of the pictures specifically. So the front right side, you can see that the right side does not have a driver's mirror. So there are some holes there, so the mirror may have existed at some point but has been removed. Again, I don't know the original configuration of how it would have been delivered to the US Navy. So it may or may have not have had a mirror there originally. But the overall condition looks nice. The skirts around the wheels have been painted. I would imagine that those would have just been black. And again, I don't think this is the US Navy paint job that's on here. The front of the bus, it clearly has non-original windshield wipers. Those look pretty modern. It's missing the chrome strips that are off the side. You kind of see here, they're still on this bus here. I would imagine those should be there. You can see the holes, which would be for the clips to hold those on. It does have the original GM logo, but those are always sun faded. It's just basically clear plastic with some paint underneath it. The destination sign is blanked out. Again, I don't know if that was original. Would the US Navy have gotten a bus with a destination sign if it's just operating on a military base? I don't know, and that would take some research to find some original photos of that configuration to see if, yes, it did or didn't have that when it showed up. Moving around the bus here, the other side, it has this cool air horns over the driver's window. Again, I'm going to say this a lot. Was that original to that, or was that added later? I kind of hope it was original. It'd be kind of fun to have that on the side of the bus. But it looks nice. Left rear. So the vent, or the intake, I'm sorry, for the engine doesn't have a kind of almost like a shield over top of it, which is the other buses that I've seen, other old looks. There's kind of this protective top, I guess, so rain and stuff wouldn't roll in. It does kind of have this little like rain deflector around it, but it just has like kind of this vent there. Lower left, there's kind of this louvered door. I'm not sure what's behind that. That's kind of interesting. Moving around the back of the bus, it has a place where you can put your license plate. It has some different locks on the rear engine door, which I haven't seen before. Those are kind of nice. These old look buses kind of have these twisting locks that push out rods to kind of lock in those rear doors, and they're just, boy, there's just kind of an art to getting those things to actually take, to lock up. So this actually may be nice if it's a mechanical lock on the outside. You can kind of see it there on the rear of the bus. So the right rear of the bus, it has kind of an interesting, I won't really call it a grate, but it's an intake, I'm guessing, or exhaust, and kind of these rather large holes. That's only going to grab the largest of debris to try to get in there if it's an intake. And continuing up the right side of the vehicle, again, the paint looks pretty nice. You can see a little bit of bubbling, or is that called like orange peel or something on that on the paint there. So again, it's not showroom quality, but honestly, not bad considering how old the vehicle is. Oh yeah, the tires are dry as they describe them. I would agree with that. I would not do much driving on these tires. It even seems to have quite a large chunk out of the tire, excuse me, on the left side here. So the fact that they drove this bus 10 miles, that's a bit of a gamble, I guess. But anyway, tires are a must. There's a close-up of the tire. So moving inside the bus, this is the driver's compartment. Looks to be in pretty good condition. There's the steering wheel, which looks like it's a new look GMC bus steering wheel. Now, did the last models of the old look have the new steering wheel of the new look? And I don't know. So this may be original. That would take a little bit of research. But overall, looks pretty nice. The inside of the bus, looking back towards the passenger area, just needs some cleaning overall. Like nothing stands out as being damaged. Same thing on the other side. So looking back at the driver's area and the entry, has a DD3 parking brake, so that's kind of nice. That's probably added later. I can't imagine that DD3s were installed in this bus originally, but basically that's just a way to basically lock the brakes using the air system rather than a mechanical lever to the left of the driver. So these are the seats that they mentioned not being installed. Clearly they're not installed, they're just kind of stacked in the back. These appear to be seats from a modern school bus, so these are not original. So you'd have to replace all of the seats. There does appear to be in the lower corners of this photo, you can see two original seats, at least right behind the driver's seat and then on the other side. So there may be a couple of these original seats among them, but all the rest of this is just basically worthless if you want to do a restoration. The ceiling looks like the ceiling from a new look bus. So I would imagine that that's original. I can't imagine someone would take out the whole ceiling and replace it with a new look. It has kind of this starry pattern with dots. Unit 67 here has a ceiling similar to that. So that's kind of a neat little feature. The engine, they said Detroit diesel. Again, the only Detroit diesels I've ever dealt with are the ones that are on this bus and then new look buses from the 60s through the 70s, and they were always oriented 90 degrees from this one. So the belts face out. A lot of belt driven thing. There's this big, I guess an air handler on the side. Is that some sort of something for the passengers on the inside? I don't know. Or is that, I guess I don't know what that is. Someone who would know a lot more about Detroit diesels or diesel engines in general would probably be able to explain that better. And another look at the engine. So it got a new battery. This looks like it may have been inside of that compartment that was on that lower left rear side of those big louvers. So not that these batteries get really hot, but maybe that's some sort of ventilation system for the battery system. So yeah, I noticed this placard that was to the right of the driver's seat, and it says U.S. Department of Navy, so that backs up what we saw on the Ohio Museum of Transportation website, and it does say that it's a TDH3501 model. How many people can sit? How many people can stand? The year that it was manufactured, 1967. The serial number, the engine serial number, which matches the bus serial number. The shipping weight, so 11,345 pounds. I guess that's the dry weight of a 30-foot old look bus, 11,000 pounds. And then the gross vehicular weight is 21,145, so basically 10,000 pounds more. So you can carry 10,000 pounds of fuel and people on board. Overall height is 112 inches, and it's 95 inches wide and 356 inches long. And the day that it was shipped was December of 1967. And then warranty, it says it's 24 months for the warranty. So the U.S. Navy goes as far as, I'm sure, A, getting it printed on paper, but B, they get it stamped in metal and then bolted to the inside of the vehicle. And then below it, we have an expansion on that, what the actual warranty is. So that's kind of a neat little placard on that. So the fact that this vehicle has a U.S. Navy history, and these two things, I don't know how you would ever have, A, discovered that was what was inside these vehicles, or B, what they said, what they look like. So these two things alone are worth quite a bit if you're looking for restoration to an original vehicle. So that's really neat. So there's a close-up of the builder plate. Again, showing the type of bus and then the coach number, which matches the other numbers that are in there. Here is the controls in the driver's compartment. So on the left side, we have the switch to turn the air on or off for the door system. Has a push start button, has a choke. Not aware diesel buses have chokes. So if they do, it's the first I've heard of that, but there's a choke there. The rear doors are little switches. So I did a video, and every bus I've driven from old GMCs and Flexibles and Gilligs and the transit buses, the door handles on the left side of the driver. Where here it's actually a lever or a switch. You push it up to open, down to close, and I'm guessing neutral, it deactivates or de-energizes the system. And then everything on the top here looks like they're lights. There's a defroster and then heater and stuff. Here's that fuel gauge that the seller said didn't work. And we got some other lights and the buzzer in the back for the passenger. So those are all the pictures for the bus. So I think overall, I think it looks like it's in pretty good shape. There's a lot of little things. I wouldn't be driving this thing right after purchasing it, but this is a pretty nice vehicle. So how would I kind of rate it? So the couple things that I would look at, first of all, is what's the overall condition of this bus? So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being a mint condition bus and 1 being parts, I would give this probably a 3. It's missing some key components to make it drivable because it doesn't have the mirrors. It needs some new tires, and tires aren't going to be cheap since you have to buy 6 of them for a vehicle of this size. The inside, it's missing the seats, but the overall condition of the bus is actually good. So I'll give that a 3 out of 5. Can it be restored? I think this vehicle is a great restoration. The big things are just the seats in the back. That's probably the single biggest thing that would need to be replaced. So it would have to have the frames and all of the seat cushions and stuff. So whether you can find a donor bus to pull those from, or are they possible to have, something replicated to be put into this, I don't know. But, honestly, you could still buy it and drive it around, restore the whole thing and just not have the seats in it. And it would still kind of be a treat to drive around. How unique is this vehicle? So I think this thing's very unique in that it's an ex-Navy bus. There can't be many of these things around. The Navy wasn't buying a lot to begin with, and of those that they bought, how many are left? There can't be many. So this is a really unique vehicle, and the fact that it has those placards on the inside showing that has got to be worth something. So I do like the uniqueness of this vehicle. So I would give that. I would give it a 3 out of 5. Why isn't it a little bit higher than that? Part of me is like, I would need to see more documentation. What did it look like? There's some questions that I have about what would be original to it, but it's fairly unique. It's definitely not your run-of-the-mill bus that's no uniqueness to it. It was just in someone's fleet, operated for 20 years, and then they parked it. But so I do like that. And then that kind of leads into rating kind of the provenance of this vehicle, which is basically the history of this vehicle and how well is that documented. It's kind of like antiques where they can kind of trace the owner lineage. And then part of that is also, the vehicle, how much of that can you substantiate? So yeah, it has those placards on the inside, which goes a long way to prove that. But I would like to try to find some photos of this or some sort of other information about it being used at that naval facility to really kind of solidify its place in time with that. So I'm going to give it a 2 initially, which seems low, but I feel that with a little bit of research, you could probably dig up some information about this bus to really place it there. What did it look like? What was the original configuration of the inside and the outside, anything like that. So overall, that kind of gives it a score of 11 out of 20, which is a little bit above half. And again, I'd be willing to go a little bit further than that if some more documentation was found about it. So it could be 12 or 13 out of a total of 20. But another factor that, in addition to that, is kind of this wow factor. And I think for a lot of people, when you buy a vehicle, there's a little bit of bias that we have, and that what is your connection to that? Or do you have a connection to that vehicle? Did you drive it? Did a family relative drive it? Is it from your hometown? Is it from your favorite city? Is it from your favorite transit line? There's a lot of things that can play into that, and that biases you when it comes to how much you're willing to spend. Someone that has no connection to it would see it as, in the plainest of forms, where you're going to see it with, much grander, eyes, if you will. And so you might be willing to spend a lot more on that. So a wow factor for this vehicle, again, I'd have no direct connection to the U.S. Navy, but I think I love the fact that it has a history to it. So I'm biased to that, and I would be probably willing to spend a little bit more. If there was an equivalent vehicle of this and didn't have any history, I would definitely be willing to spend more for this one. So even to rank that on a scale of 1 to 5, I would probably give it, a 3. I'm really kind of drawn to this being, a military vehicle, and that it's really possibly one of the only examples of that. So I'll give that a 3 out of 5. And again, I may be persuaded to go a little bit higher if some more documentation was found to back that up. So then it comes down to what would I be willing to pay? The scale kind of goes from 0, a vehicle that's just parts, up to a vehicle that's mint condition, and it has, it was used in a movie, or it's famous for being a part of something else. All of these things in place. And on that end, the really only example that I've seen of recent time is the auction that sold the bus that was used in the movie Speed. And that bus sold for $102,000. So let's say it's $100,000 is the highest end that you would find as a purchase price for a transit bus. Again, there's not a lot of people buying these things, but so where does this fall on that scale? Well, it's definitely not on the 100,000, and it's definitely not a 0. This is probably, in the middle. If this was fully restored, personally, I'd be willing to go, let's say, $60,000, $70,000, but it needs some work. It needs to have all the seats replaced and all of the new tires, which seems kind of insignificant, but that's money that you have to pay into it, and no one has an unlimited budget on these things. But the fact that it runs, and I think it's a good candidate for restoration, I'd probably be willing to spend $15,000 for this bus. So I think the final bid for this was $7,000 or $8,000, and there was a reserve that wasn't met. So I don't know what the seller was looking for, but I'd probably look at $15,000. Again, going back to some of the other check marks that I had placed on this, could it be substantiated with photos and all that stuff? Again, I might be willing to go a little bit higher than that. But I think that's kind of a safe bet. I'm not looking for another bus. The wife wouldn't like that. But it's a 30-foot bus that's kind of neat. And the last thing I'd like to comment on this, obviously, is the reality is that we all have a set budget. This bus is in Georgia. I'm in Ohio. Even if I was willing to spend $15,000, but what would it take to transport this bus? I wouldn't drive this bus a mile on the road, let alone 10 or hundreds of miles. So that would play into it. So it's kind of an interesting question to ask yourself. What would you be willing to pay for it, and how far are you willing to go to try to get something like this? So honestly, what's your thoughts on this? I play this game with myself, trying to put myself again in the shoes of the buyer. What would you be willing to pay for this? Is there something in this bus that I'm not seeing that should greatly raise the value on it? And I'm not saying I'm right on this. It could be worth, even in this condition, it's a solid $30,000 bus or $40,000. But again, my counter to that is, even if this bus was restored, you're not going to get your money back out of it. It's just kind of a sunk cost, and it's kind of that balancing act on budget. So anyway, so there's my kind of impression of this bus. I think it's a neat vehicle. I hope it sells to somebody that's interested in it. I hope they are interested in its history and that they're willing to put the money into it to restore it to something, in my opinion, should reflect its history with the U.S. Navy. But hey, just better to keep it running than sitting, dying in a junkyard. So there you go. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. I'm always curious to hear what other people find interesting in these buses. And, tell me again, what do you think this thing is worth? Thanks for watching. Bye now.